Howdy everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Average Joe, the series where I'll be taking a look at a vehicle and telling you whether or not I believe it's worth the average player's time, or in this case, their money. In this episode, we'll be covering the XM-1 General Motors, a Rank 6 9.3 American Premium MBT. Now, I do want to say early on, this thing basically just plays like a worse Abrams, and it makes sense. It is a prototype that led up to the Abrams, but I just want to get that out of the way now, that other than one quality, which I'll talk about later on, this thing is basically just going to play like an Abrams, but worse. With that introduction out of the way, let's jump right into what this vehicle is able to do, starting off with the weapons. The main armament for the XM-1 is the M68 105mm cannon. This gun has some good, some bad for its battle rating. Overall, it's gonna treat you decently. Its pen is still below 300 with a dart, so its armor pen is not really good enough to go through anywhere you shoot. You do have to aim for weak spots. However, it's still gonna be enough to deal with basically everything you can see. Unfortunately, the base reload for this gun is absolutely terrible though for what it's capable of. With it having a basic reload of 8.71 seconds, you're going to be outloaded by basically everything you can see. To go with that, your gun angles do leave a little bit to be desired. Your gun depression is alright at 10 degrees, that's fine, but your gun elevation is only 15 degrees, leaving you a little bit vulnerable to helicopter rushers if it wasn't for your machine guns, which let's talk about your machine guns. The XM-1 has a grand total of 3 machine guns, which is more than most other vehicles, especially at this battle rating. One of them is a 50 cal mounted on the roof, which is great. Really good for dealing with early helicopter rushes. Another one is a roof-mounted 7.62, which is even better to help with that. You have 2 machine guns firing at one guy, it's great. And lastly, you have a 7.62 coax, which, it's alright. It's pretty nice because the fact that you actually have pretty good reaction times in the XM1, so you can actually get some use out of the 7.62 machine gun, which is kind of rare. However, you're really going to be using the 2 roof-mounted ones for most of your machine gunning. Moving on from weaponry onto mobility, this is where the XM1 really shines. The XM1 is much faster than almost everything at the same battle rating. It's faster than the Abrams, an MBT notorious for being really quick. And this is how you're going to want to actually play the XM1. You're going to want to use its absurdly good top speed and acceleration to get to angles where the enemy either won't expect you or get to angles before they'd expect you. And when you do this, you can get very easy shots. You're going to actually see in the background footage that a lot of the people that I shoot are people that just were not expecting me to be where I was, because most MBTs aren't going to be able to get there that quickly. Moving on to survivability, this is going to be somewhat annoying because you really only have one feature to keep you alive, and that is the fact that you have blow-up panels in the ready rack. Unfortunately, they are extremely buggy. I don't know if this is intentional or not, I'm pretty sure it's just broken, but the blow-up panels on the XM1 really don't like to work. It's pretty annoying, honestly. So don't rely on them. And it's quite unfortunate that you can't rely on them because they're your main feature. You don't have smokes. You don't have smoke grenades, you don't have ESS, you have nothing like that. So the fact that your main thing to keep you alive doesn't work most of the time is pretty annoying. Especially because your armor is all but non-existent. Against anything that isn't a heat projectile, your armor will likely not do anything, which is really unfortunate because most things that you're going to be fighting are either firing tandem missiles or darts. There's really no in between. And even if you are hit by, say, a heat projectile or a normal heat missile, something like that, odds are it's probably still going to go through because the armor layout of the XM1 isn't exactly great. Moving on to some miscellaneous things, you do have a laser rangefinder and thermals. The thermals aren't very good, but at this point, if you're playing the American Tech Tree up to this point, you probably already know that your thermals are pretty bad. And another thing, the matchmaker hates this vehicle. I have played a lot of matches in the XM1. This was my first premium I ever bought, and I have maybe had 2 full down tiers, and the majority of my matches were up tiers to at least 10.0. So you're fighting the T-72 terms that has really good ERA, you're fighting the 2S3A, you're fighting a bunch of vehicles that are just infinitely better than you at everything other than speed. So that's really how you have to play this thing. You have to use your mobility, otherwise you're probably not going to be able to do much. Overall, the XM1 has an okay gun for the battle rating. Its armor is only gonna block glancing blows against people that don't know what they're doing, and the mobility is honestly the only real redeeming factor of this vehicle. But because of how good its mobility is, if you can get decent with its gun, it's still able to absolutely stomp people. But that's not what you're here for. You're not here to see what this vehicle is capable of in the hands of somebody that's played 100 matches in it. You're here to hear how well it's going to actually work for your average player. So with all that being said, let's talk about whether or not I believe the vehicle is worth it. So, the vehicle is $60 USD. For $60, you're going to get the XM-1 GM, 2,000 Golden Eagles, in 15 days of premium time. Do I believe it is worth that price? Well, ever since the introduction of the KVT, I don't think it is. I think that now with the KVT being in the game and it only being $5 more, I personally think your average player is going to get more use out of the M1 KVT, which if you want to know about that, I've made a video on that as well. However, the XM1 is still a very enjoyable vehicle, especially around its battle rating when using it in a lineup, but that does not make it worth it. With all that being said, I'd just like to thank you all for watching. Please let me know in the comments if there's any other vehicles you'd like to see in the future of the series. Have a good one.